Hi friends, my name is Jake. Welcome to Canadian Cutting Edge, and today we are announcing the Patreon winner for the month. And I haven't heard back the winner's preference on what name he wants to use, so I'm just going to say it is Stan. I used Google number generator to pick the number. It came up at 11. Look through my list of Patreon supporters. He was the 11th one down, and so he wins his choice of knives. He's in the UK, so thankfully there's 2 slip joints in there, but if he doesn't like either one of those, we'll work out something else. So congratulations to, well, we'll call his name Stan. So thank you very much to all my Patreon supporters. You guys are awesome. If you want to become a Patreon supporter of the channel, go to patreon.com/cc. Is it this way? Patreon.com/CCE, and you can join up. You get a chance every month to win one of the knives that I reviewed or items that I reviewed in the previous month. I guess he could pick the Baton 3 from OLIGHT. And that's pretty good odds. And all of my knife sales, I either do exclusively to my Patreon supporters, or I give you the first 48 hours access to all the sales, which means by the time the general public can buy one of the knives, usually 2/3 or more of them have already been picked up by you guys. And since it's just a small group, there were 45 Patreon sponsors last month. Every little bit helps out. You get really good odds, and I get a little bit of help. Today's knife we're looking at is by Rough Ryder. Rough Ryder is a brand by Smoky Mountain Knife Works. Some Rough Ryder knives you can buy in various places. If you want to buy straight from Smoky Mountain Knife Works, they only ship through their website directly to the United States. Canadians can buy Smoky Mountain Knife Works. Shipping's just crazy though. It starts at $28 for any purchase up to $49.99 US. And then, as the value goes up, the price of your shipping goes up too. So might not be worth it unless you just can't find what you want anywhere else. But if you're in America, $15, well, $14.99 US for this knife. And we've got VG10 steel. It's a slip joint and aluminum body knife. And I've reviewed another VG10 knife by Rough Ryder, and yeah, they're quite decent. I quite like this one. So let's get over to the tabletop and look at all the details of this slip joint knife. So here is the knife, but before we get into any more details of this, I've got to show you another Rough Ryder. There's this guy, and this is the, what's the model number? Clean that off there. 1976, RR 1976. It's a lockback brass 440 stainless steel blade. I'm not going to review it. It's a decent enough knife, but this lock, there's so much friction in lock stick, if you will, in the lock mechanism that it takes a lot of pressure. And I've got really hard calluses right there on my thumb. I'm double jointed on my thumbs, and so I tend to push with that, and it's sticking every single time. And I'm pushing. I was trying to do that as quickly as I could, and it just catches, and there we go. Not good. And, since it can't be taken apart, I don't recommend this knife at all. But we're looking at this. This is a pretty good blade. I like the blade style. It's a clip point blade. Quite nice. Full flat grind. We've got a good sharpener's choil in there. A proper one. I like the choil. The blade is thin enough behind the grind to be a good cutter. It's thick enough for its size. This is a good knife in terms of its sizes and stuff. The sharpening, not great. Not terrible. Very different grind angles. Let me show you something here. Hopefully it'll work in the lighting here. Look at the cutting edge just along here, and look for the darkness turn into, shininess like that. And you'll see it travel across. See that? It's a light. I come down, it gets dark at the heel of the blade, and the darkness travels over before getting across. That's because there's different grind angles changing all the way along here from very steep to more shallow. It's a good slip joint. The pivot is pretty good. The spring on the back here is fairly strong. Not quite as strong as some of the Tucson knives that I've had, but fairly strong. So it's hard to, if you're just learning, it would be hard to hold the knife and stay clear of that and turn that at the same time, because you have to push quite hard. So if you do hold it this way, just push, and then as soon as you feel it letting go, just let go of it and don't push it any further. And it'll stop at that half stop. And then you can make sure your hands are out of the way to finish closing it. So it could be a little softer. That spring could be a little weaker, but it's not bad. The blade, you can see a little bit of a wear mark right there. You don't want to file that down at all. That's what touches the back to stop the blade from the cutting edge hitting the back and getting dent marks in it and, destroying the blade. So you want to leave that alone, and this keeps the blade safe and keeps the edge from getting impacted. Aluminum, the pivot screws are actually fairly decent. They're not bad pivot screws. I haven't taken this apart yet. I've just looked at the screws in detail. These body screws are garbage. And I've seen these kind of screws on other knives, low budget knives in the past. I would be very, very hesitant to take this knife apart if I owned it. And, but I do own it. I'm going to try to take it apart anyways for the video. But if I was just a regular, guy owning this knife and I wasn't making videos, I would never take this apart, because those will likely strip out when I take them apart. This is one piece of aluminum, the black part and the green part. It's just, I think it's green anodized, and then they spray paint black, some kind of coating on here. It was chipped when I got it, just a tiny little chip right there. And on the other knife that I got like this, same way, this surface will chip quite easily. The green section here, that's anodized, it won't show chips quite as easily. And the anodization is probably a little bit more durable than this paint that they put on here. Now, if you look at the knife this way, there's the back spring. It goes all the way to the very end. These two screws hold it, and it's trying to flex. I think it's flexing off of that point right there, but in any case, that spring pushes down, which gives it the strength. The shape of this knife, it's a fairly traditional knife. It's somewhat comfortable in hand. You've got a bit of a swell right there, and then it comes back, and then it swells on the end. We've got a brass lanyard tube right there, so that's a good thing. There's no pocket clips or anything. This is the kind of knife that you would either just drop in your pocket or put into a leather sleeve. So I will be looking at some leather sleeves from Rough Ryder as well, and a knife like this works good with their sleeves. Some things I don't like. I don't like this big VG10 on the side of the bevel here. All the other writing on Rough Ryder knives is nice and small. Like right there, you've got the model number, and then it says China. And on this side, it says Rough Ryder. Right there on the Ricasso, I like that placement for writing. It's nice and small. I don't mind it. The VG10 is too big. So I think I've covered all the cons. The VG10, this black paint. Oh, and my dog's sleeping. He's snoring a little bit. You might be hearing him in the background, especially if you've got headphones on. And these screws. So those are the three main cons on this thing. I'm starting to talk more quietly. It's okay. I don't need to stay quiet for Bandit. He can wake up if I talk too loud. And now it's time to go over all the sizes, dimensions, all that fun stuff. Like I said, VG10, Rockwell, usually around 60. The weight of this knife, it is 68 grams, 2.4 ounces. Not bad. I didn't show the balance point earlier. I keep forgetting to do that on these videos. The balance point's way back here. I would prefer it to be up over this. And so the handle would have to be lighter, which would be nice anyways, for it to be here. So there's that. The sharpness from the factory measured right about here, about 1/3 up or 2/3 back from the tip. 175 bests. Not terrible, not great. pretty good. It's a little bit worse than average for the knives that I review on this channel, but not by much. So it's reasonably sharp. The cutting edge length, 76.2 millimeters, which is 3 inches on the nose. But the blade length is over 3 inches. It is 82.4 millimeters, just under 3 1/4, 3.24 inches. The thickness of the blade, and I measured it up here at the ricasso to see how thick of stock they started with, 2.41 millimeters, which is 95 thousandths of an inch, so just under 1/10 of an inch. The blade depth, the widest point is right here, where the clip point starts, 19.5 millimeters, 0.77 inches. The thickness of the edge behind the grind, measured right same spot where I measured its sharpness, 0.5 millimeter, 19.5 thousandths of an inch. That's pretty much ideal for what I like on an EDC knife. The grind angles, now this is pretty bad. I'm going to say, now which side's which again? This side, it's around 15 degrees, and this side, it's around 21 degrees. But in reality, it starts at 13.7 and ends at 15.4, which is not that bad of a difference, just about 1.5 degrees. And on this side, it starts at 16.8 degrees and it ends at 25.7 degrees. So quite the transition, especially the last 1/4 of an inch here, it gets a whole lot steeper. So before that, it's like 20.9 in this area where my pinky is now. So let's talk about the handle now. The handle length, 102.4 millimeters, 4.03 inches. The grip area, it's about 9.5 centimeters, about 3 3/4 inches. Depends on exactly at what point you measure it, right? So now for the handle thickness, and I measured it in the middle of the handle here, 11.8 millimeters, 0.46 of an inch. So a good bit under, well, a little bit under 1/2 an inch. The handle depth, I usually say within the grip area, but you can grip right to the end here. So I'm going to have to say right here, 23.2 millimeters, 0.91 of an inch. When it's closed, it's 28.6 millimeters, 1.13 of an inch. And the total length of it, when it's open, 184.7 millimeters, which is 7.27 inches. So it's got good proportions. It's got good, decent weight, good grip. It's an okay knife. At its price, I think it's a good knife. $15 US. If you are in America, this is a good buy. If you're looking for a traditional slip joint, slightly updated knife, it's not, well, pretty good materials, decent materials, and fairly well made. So time now to take it apart. Oh boy. That's a T8 screw. Let's see, is it spinning along? Yes. So we've got a free spinning pivot, which means you've got to get a screwdriver, one on either side, to undo it, which is unfortunate. So I'm going to now take a look at these screws, but I got to get my other screwdriver bit, the T6. I'm filming this section with my cell phone. There's my vise. Don't take this thing apart. The screws all freely spun. This screw here, there you go. I got the whole pin out, and really hard to get back in unless you've got a vise like this to push the spring in, because that is the fulcrum. So either you're going to have a tough time getting this screw in or this screw in. I found it was easier to get this tight here and then put the middle one back in by using a vise to push the spring back down, and then I can get it in there. And it's going to be a little hard. I can't do it and hold the camera at the same time, but I strongly suggest if you get one of these, do not take it apart. You can use 2 T8 screwdrivers, one on each side, to change the tightness of the pivot screw. But other than that, there's no adjustments to be made. You can take it all the way apart. the brass tube is going to get deformed when you finally take it all the way apart. Chances are very high anyways, and then you'll have a tough time putting it back together. Well, I used this product again, DriveGrip. If you're new to the channel, haven't seen this before, I've got a video on this. This is an anti-cam out fluid. It helps you to not strip out screws. It still is easy to strip if you've got soft screws. That screw, that one's a little bit damaged. None of them are stripped yet, but there is a little bit of damage to these screws. And putting the last one in, I still have DriveGrip on the screwdriver. There's a little bit left in that screw too, so there you go. Final thoughts. 15 US dollars. That's about $19 Canadian. Unfortunately, you can't get it in Europe, but if you could, that's an equivalent of about 12.66 euros before any taxes, or about 11 pounds, again, before any taxes. We don't do VAT included in North America. So, I like it. For 15 bucks, this is a pretty good knife. The VG10 cut very well. It kept its edge for a reasonable amount of time, like I expect VG10. It's, you know, a solid two-hand opener that works well. I have not tried putting a, removable thumb stud on here to make it a one-hand opener. But, I'm fine with two-hand openers. I use them quite often. And slip joints, as far as a slip joint goes, it doesn't take long at all to get used to how strong that back spring is. And, the little things like the silly paint on here, and the soft screws, it's really not that big a deal for the price of knife that it is. You can hardly find any knives with VG10 at this price point. So Smoky Mountain Knife Works is an American company, but yes, they've got their knives made in China. They've got another line of knives called the Ryder Reserve that have D2 steel, if you are liking D2 steel better. But those cost a little bit more, a fair bit more. I think they start at about $37, $38 and go up from there. I think they've only got 3 or 4 models right now. So, good knife. I like it. And it's a good user. Thanks for watching my video. Thanks to my Patreon supporters again. You guys are awesome. And remember, everyone, cut towards your chum, not your thumb. Bye for now.